Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hey everyone, welcome to the discussion for Descent Legends of the Dark. Now, this is actually a pretty interesting discussion. One caveat for this is we are only a couple quests in to the series. So, as with most series, either we will do, depending on how long it takes, we might do a discussion in between, or we'll most likely do a finale and talk about the whole thing, what we thought. But with that being said, this is actually, because you probably wouldn't be aware of it, this is actually kind of a remake of a IP that Fantasy Flight has done years ago. There was a Descent First Edition and a Descent Second Edition. But with this one, it's not even close to the realm of what those other games were.
Okay.
The original Descents were a kind of like a one versus all.
Oh.
One person played as an overlord and controlled the minions. It was scenario based. There
Gotcha.
was a campaign to them, and then the other people played the heroes. Now, Descent was actually second edition. I haven't played first. Was the very first game in this kind of in a hobby game that I ever played.
Really?
Talisman was the second one, and I'm glad I gave Talisman a shot because I hated Descent.
Wow.
Yeah, it always felt overpowered because the way it would work is like the heroes would all go and then the villain would go, but I felt, or the overlord, but I always felt he had way more that he could do, that there was no interaction. Like, you couldn't interrupt me, you couldn't do any, like, so it's like, oh, if you didn't complete the objective, because each scenario had an objective, then I would just, like, overload with a bunch of cards and shit.
So it's asymmetrical.
Yeah, I mean, the enemies kind of still did what they did. It was kind of like I controlled all the enemies, and then I had cards that I could play. So if your heroes would just go down, then I could still do more, and the Overlord had an objective, and then the heroes had an objective. But each scenario was broken up into two parts.
Okay.
So there was like the first part, and whoever won that one would gain an advantage in the second part.
Oh.
And so it kind of felt like the rich got richer, where it's like, oh, okay.
Which, it just feels bad.
Yeah, so if I win as the Overlord in the first one, then the second part's going to be really hard for the heroes in the second. So I never liked it. I was always an advocate against actual Descent. But, so I wasn't even planning on getting this, because I was like, fuck that. There's no way I wouldn't even touch that.
You're like, system. How could you guys even justify making a third version of this game?
Yeah, so I completely stayed away from it. And the fact that this has, I mean, it's $170 market price. And I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Fantasy Flight, you make 3 games, and then you make this one, and you're just like, oh, it's nearly $200. But with all that being said, I gotta say, this game is an absolute blast.
Oh, yes.
This is
so fun.
It is so much fun. This is one of the pinnacles of kind of everything that Fantasy Flight does really well with dungeon crawls. And with it, I mean, because they always do a great job with their apps. And that's kind of, I feel like, a big chunk of the price point. Because this is we'll talk about the app in a sec. But I'm so glad that they made this, and it's not a third edition, it's none of that. It's, hey, here's basically rebranding Descent. And they have a big Act 1. Well, it's not big, but they have an Act 1, so they must have plans for multiple acts
Act
in
2,
this world.
and so on
with
and so
the, with this massive map, I mean, this whole fourth end, I mean, we're in the forest, but I'm assuming either it's going to be different areas or different whatever they plan on doing. So yeah, with 2 scenarios, because I thought that each quest was going to be maybe an hour, and but no, they are sprawling in terms of, like, the first one just kept going, and I was thinking, do we just have to save it and go to town? Like, how do we do this?
They just take a while.
Yeah, and it's so much fun.
It is. It's a blast.
The way that you play, it's very familiar to a lot of their other games. You know, you have your attributes, I like the unique dice, you have some mitigation in terms of what you do with the dice. A lot of cool powers, like the surge actions that you can just spread around. The fact that the fatigue mechanic is really unique, because that lets you kind of truly explore what your characters can do.
Capable of.
And I would say this game isn't hard, but it's not easy either.
No.
Granted, we are playing on standard difficulty.
We're playing standard. We're only playing with 2 of us.
Yeah.
So the fact that you can play this game with a varying amount of players on normal, and it doesn't feel like busted.
Yeah.
I was thinking, oh, we can have more, and you were like, I don't want to have more things to manage, which makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it, like getting later on where everybody's got their own massive skill tree, that would be a lot.
Yeah, one of the biggest complaints that people have been hearing about this is that the town phase with more people becomes cumbersome, because it's like you have to spread resources around and things like that and decide who to buy for what. I can kind of see that slowing the game down, but with games like this, everyone's like, "Oh, play it solo. It's the best solo." And I'm like, "I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's great with one character." Well, actually, I think you always control 2, I believe, even in solo. But most campaign games like this that are like people say play by yourself, I always actually have a lot more fun with at least one other person. Like Gloomhaven, it's like in a solo game you control 2 people. Okay, just play with someone else, so you can at least experience the story together, and you're not just weirdly sitting in your house just like, oh yeah,
I'm having so much fun.
Yeah. And I actually don't mind the town portion. Like, it allows someone to commune with, oh, hey, what should we do? How do we want to build? What do we want to spend these resources on?
Like, the first phase was getting me stuff. This next phase, we got, if you choose to play Galadin again, we got arrow types for him. So...
yeah, and stuff for chance, and a lot of stuff to build up all the characters the way that the app will remember. So... With that being said, I think that you could play this with multiple people and have fun. Every character, like, I don't feel like you go through the motions, even though the movement's kind of arbitrary. It's like, because since you can move diagonal, it's like you can almost always get to where you need to. But with this, I feel like there was some tactical advantage to kind of moving, because you knew some of the enemies they could only move so far. So because I was just there, it's like, start backing up and then let them run to us. And it's because you were so far behind that it's like, I need to back up so they can run to us so you can get there.
Without using multiple actions to close the distance.
Yeah. And they included the impeded rule, which wasn't in any of their other games. Because I always hated the fact that there's an enemy here, and you could be here and just go, oh, okay, time to run off. It's like, how the fuck, like, how are you moving just across like that and they do nothing? And in this, they don't attack you or anything, but they slow your movement.
Yeah, they force you to not move.
Yeah, you can always move one, but it's like, oh, nope, impeded. Okay, well, that's your entire turn is moving. So I like that at least that's something instead of having opportunity attack. Josh, what do you think of the game?
I think it's really good. The first quest, I didn't do a whole lot, and I was like, this guy fucking sucks.
You didn't do nothing.
Well, it didn't feel like I was contributing as much as I could have been. Granted, dice are dice.
Yeah.
So there's always that. This time around, though, I felt really useful in certain situations. A chance was also incredibly useful. I like the movement seems a little ridiculous at times, but like, you're right, during combat it's whatever.
Yeah.
I like the skills. I like the fact that you get 2 weapons.
Yeah, you get 2 weapons with different abilities, and actually utilizing them, you have to flip them. And actually, well, just skills and your character.
You can distribute your fatigue however you want. I like that. I like the different amounts of types of things you can do on your turn. I like the abilities that you can place on enemies, and I actually like the abilities they can place on you. It seems really useful, or makes it strategic, I guess.
Right.
I like that there's not instant death.
Yeah, and in the other games, like, Mansions of Madness or Journeys in Middle-earth, there wasn't ever instant death. You just took, like in Mansions of Madness, you take wound cards, and if you ever hit your wound threshold, you take a wounded card, which like I think slows your to overall movement. And if you take another card, then you die, and that usually ends the campaign. Similar here. I always like the fact that when you're wounded, it's kind of debilitating. Oh, you take a minor, then a major, and then it's like the major is hobbled. So reduce your speed by 1 after you shift for the first time each round. Suffer 2 wounds, or suffer 2 fatigue.
Yeah, I have frustrated after you attack, suffer a fatigue, and then raging after you attack, suffer a wound and a fatigue.
Yeah, and there's not a lot. This game is extremely clean.
Yes.
Like, it's very streamlined. The like all the cards are very concise. Like with the skills, the weapons, and because what they could have done, which I'm glad they didn't, is for every shaft, every grip, every item you get, every arrow, they could have had a card for. So it becomes like you just have a bunch of shit in front of you.
And this fucking manages it all.
Yep, the app is just like, oh, like the upgrade we gave you for your haft,
the bells,
which actually, funny enough, we didn't even really use because it does 20. You have a 20% chance of dealing damage with the bells to other enemies.
Yeah.
So if you had your bells and you hit with those snipers around, 20% chance of dealing damage to them.
Splashing.
And the app just does all that. So you get, this game is like 60% board game, 40% video game.
And it's nice.
Yeah.
That it does most of the work.
Yeah, and what's amazing is the app allows you to be like, oh, like, I read the rules once.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, okay, because it's familiar, like, it's Fantasy Flight. They don't make a lot of games anymore. They used to have their hand on everything. Now they just do IPs. They make either Marvel Champions, Arkham Horror, the card game. They did Mansions of Madness. I think they're done. But they did this. And then Journeys of Middle-earth. So all their games are very familiar. So they don't do a lot, but what they do is very well done.
What they do is perfect.
Quality over quantity. You know? And
it shines.
Yeah. And so whenever I read the rules, I was like, okay, I understand. I'm familiar with it. But if you don't, you can be like, oh crap, what do the spikes do? Oh, you just click on it in the app and it just tells you. Oh, what does shift mean? And then, glossary, shift. There it is. And then even the question we had was, does shift ignore terrain? And it's like, no. It blatantly tells you. So all the stuff that, the enfeebled, the status effects, all that stuff, the app tells you.
Yeah.
And even whenever it comes to line of sight, where it's like, can I hit that person? Oh, line of sight, click where you're at. Oh, yes, I can. It's absolutely amazing.
It is fantastic.
It's the culmination of years of what Fantasy Flight was doing with their games, all poured into this. I mean, I would honestly say get a laptop or like an iPad, and run it on that. A phone, like, it works for Mansions of Madness, it works for Journeys of Middle-earth, but this one is by far the busiest app. I mean, they have animation like that. Like, well, not really. Like, in the battle, they have the two people, like, just kind of like gyrating.
They're sprite movements.
Yeah. But it's just they took all the cool video game stuff where you don't have to have the cards in front of you, because what it does is it makes you forget about stuff.
Oh yeah.
If you had to remember that your grip did splash damage, one, there'd be no way to do a percentage. I mean, really, except the percentile. It's just like, nope, app does that, and it doesn't take. I don't think it takes away from anything.
Oh no, I think it enhances the experience.
Yeah, like you're kind of involved. Everyone, I mean, one person just kind of runs it, and they're just like, oh, okay, you want to interact with that? Reads it out loud. I will say the voice acting for the app is what you would expect.
Yeah.
From...
It's not, like, top tier. It's a nice touch, but it was, like...
Yeah.
It wouldn't have hurt if it wasn't there.
Mm-hmm. It is quite a bit of reading, but I would say, after playing, like, Madara, for example, Madara is a narrative game. Like, it's fucking... I think the app for the entire Act 1 of Madara is like 25 hours of narration.
Holy shit.
But there's an app that I have for it with a professional voice actor doing it. Here, they probably could have put a little more effort. If anything, definitely hire someone. Every character kind of sounds the same with their, whatever their sayings. Like, you open up a chest and it's like, looks like I'm the best one for this. And it's like, then the other one, he just does a lower register and he's just like, oh, I got him, or whatever dumb shit that they say. I've given every character a voice, but I'm not fucking good at it.
You're trying, that's what matters.
Right? I'm just like, it's a cat, alright, I'll do like a seething hiss kind of voice, and then, yeah. So, let's talk about the 3D aspect of the game.
I wasn't sure how good it would be, and I actually really enjoy it.
Yeah, it's really cool, and very few games do it. Like, at most games you would just have the tiles, and then you would have a stair token, and you would just have to imagine that it's actually, a higher level.
Yeah.
But this game, you actually physically get to put it in.
We talk about it all the time and joke about getting like Dwarven Forge stuff for D&D. I don't have the money for that.
Yeah.
This is really cheap and effective use of all the pieces over and over again.
Yeah.
Because, this is the same tiles that we would use in like a cityscape.
Yeah.
And it still feels like, we're in this dungeon, this escape room, or whatever. I think it's utilized pretty well. There's a select amount of pieces, but, rinse and repeat, it still feels like it's used very well.
Yeah, because the 3D aspect of it, it's like, you are going to see the same terrain types. There's only like 4 or 5. There's cobblestone, grass, wood, and dirt. But I think what enhances that, one, they do a pretty cool idea with these terrain pieces. So it adds lava and water and things like that. That just kind of are underlays, which is really cool. I haven't seen that before. But what's neat is that what enhances the same terrain type is the atmosphere of the quest.
Yeah.
Like, we've seen... Like, this was obviously in a dungeon in a well, and the other one was, like, in a watchtower.
Yeah.
And it's like, just thematically in my head, I'm able to imagine that we're in this scenario. Instead of being like, cobblestone again, this is the same thing. It doesn't feel that way.
Say we went from a forest by a lake into a town that had a garrison, like a laboratory, and then a watchtower, and then we jumped out of the watchtower into the forest.
Yeah.
Like, it was all executed very, very well.
And then the 2 that we've done so far, they did something unique with the tiles.
Oh, yeah.
Like, the one just continued as if you were progressing on, and then others was as if you were running through the woods trying to figure out where you need to go. So none of the tiles inherently connected. You had to interact with paths.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that's just how it's going to continue. Utilizing, the same terrain type, or the tile pieces, but utilizing them differently with actual app mechanics.
Yes.
Which is what Journeys of Middle-earth did. They had tiles, and then you also had... you had battle boards. So they did 2 different types of, like, scenarios or situations.
One for battles, one for exploration.
Pretty much is kind of how it was. Mainly. So... you have quite a few terrain pieces. All of them are interactable. Not only do you have interacting with the terrain, you also have interacting with these actual pieces. And this is Mansions of Madness kind of stuff. Search tokens that you could click on and be like, what does this do? Which is nice. There was a game that I played earlier this year where you had to interact with tokens, but you couldn't click on it to be reminded what it did. So you had to just go there and actually spend time to figure it out. And I always hated that. It was like, why can't I just... It's like, because I don't remember. 3 of those things, it's like, I don't remember what that says. So you're able to click on and be like, okay, yes, I do want to go deal with that. The 3D aspect is awesome. It really fleshes out the game, I think.
I would agree with that.
So... with that, now let's talk about the app a little bit more. The app, I mean, essentially you have to have the app. It's free, so thank God. Otherwise, I'd be kind of really shitting on if you had to pay for it.
Yeah, on top of $170 retail.
Granted, you are paying for the app through that price point, which we'll actually talk about that as well. But what's neat is, so the app does a couple things. It's all your events. You have no event cards. All the events are going to be things that you could... Because if you're in town, you can actually click on events. Like, events can pop up that you can go deal with.
Oh, really?
That might give you side quests. That might, I don't know how much they're going to do choice-based. I don't know if we do one objective, if that bars us from doing something else. Or, I guess we'll figure that out. But what's really neat is the fact that when you go to the city, you are collecting materials. Like you would in a video game. And then spending that on a bunch of recipes that you find out. What do you think about that?
I like the uniqueness of gathering materials to craft or buy and then craft stuff. Mm-hmm. It really will, make unique scenarios for other characters. Like, we were able to get me something. We didn't get anything. Well, no, we did. We got one thing for Chance and we got a thing for Galadin.
We got recipes. We haven't bought them yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Correct. I really dig it.
Yeah.
I dig the whole use of the app. It transitions. Like, you're moving from one area to the next. Mm-hmm. You have random encounters that happen. All the unique things that you would only usually get in a video game or in D&D.
Yeah.
You get it in this app.
Yeah.
And it enhances the experience by leaps and bounds.
Yeah, it's not just kind of like KDM, for example, where it's like, oh, hunt phase, okay, settlement phase.
What's in the book? Oh, yeah. It's that again.
Oh, right.
Oh,
right.
It's that again.
Oh, wow, we died, Yeah, it all flows as if, oh, hey, we just did a quest in D&D. Now let's go back to town because we have some money and we can buy stuff. And, ooh, what do we want to buy? How do we want to level up?
It is nice.
This is one of the closest to, I wouldn't say to a video game. It definitely still feels like a board game.
Oh, yeah, I would say that
but it's
also.
the closest to D&D, that I think Fantasy Flight has ever done. There's other games that I feel are still, this is pretty much D&D, but they do a really good job, like you mentioned with the encounters and stuff. Go into town, either armor or upgrade your weapons, or buy recipes or get potions or things like that. All of that is done, and then it's just like, oh, okay, we're done in town. Let's click on the map, and we have some options. Which one do we want to do? What can we do? Probably, I don't know how much it sprawls out.
I don't either.
We'll figure that out as we continue going.
I'm curious to see how you get vocal choices or choices for the character. Like, you had 2 dialogue options. I wonder how that affects them throughout the game.
Yeah,
because I wondered
talking
if
about oh hey, I'm because you were like, I want to make a settlement for hybrids
that's peaceful and away from tyranny. Galadin was real heavy on vengeance, and I wondered what would have happened if he was more towards his new allies. Mm-hmm. There's the voice option in the cutscene or whatever where it was we're not friends. I wonder if he would say we're friends.
Oh, right.
Or something if his dialogue option was changed.
Yeah.
So
I'm excited to see how the story progresses. I'm actually intrigued. I've heard that the story was pretty one note. I like it. I think if you have an aversion to this game already, you're probably gonna nitpick a little bit more by being like, oh, these characters are all the same. I'm excited to see what the characters can do, how their backstories flesh out, if we end up caring about them. That could just be more of us being way more into role playing. I mean, you're our DM in a campaign currently. I have been playing D&D for years, so we might put a little bit more effort into humanizing
our characters
than someone who just wants to play this. So
that's very fair and true. Say, critically thinking, you would assume well, you're assuming the role of a character, and you would play it how you would think they would do something.
Yeah.
But I could see people also just like, it's a game. I'm gonna play it as a game.
I want the game or the app to tell me everything. I don't want to input anything, which is fine. Some people don't want to do that. They don't want to put in the effort. But for games like this, I definitely like to.
Oh yeah, of course.
I was gonna say something, but I forgot. Yeah, the app it's so good. The way that it utilizes like the scenarios. And even the 3D terrain isn't that big of a deal. Like, even the levels, it's kind of quick. Playing by yourself, it'd be a little bit more annoying. I think you'd have to be the one to find all the 3D pieces, all the minis, and set all that up, and then you can go. But I feel like it's really quick to just kind of, you're the one doing the 3D terrain, and I'm setting up and running the app. So if you're going to play this game, I would imagine play with one other person. And then it'll go by smoothly. Now, the ultimate question is, of course, is this game worth $170 or $140 if you are if you buy it online, really? Now, this is barring the fact that if someone I don't obviously we don't know anyone's situation on how much is $100 too much. A lot of people would say so. So assuming that you have money to burn, because if you don't, then
why would
you try? Don't go into debt for the game. Don't go into debt for any fucking game.
Yeah, no, absolutely not.
100 and because that is a lot of money. That is, I mean,
how much is Gloomhaven again?
100.
It's $100. Does this give you more than Gloomhaven has? I haven't played Gloomhaven, so I can't answer
that's
that.
a good question, because Gloomhaven is kind of the end-all be-all of dungeon crawls. There's no app to Gloomhaven. Would I play this over Gloomhaven? No, I would not.
So that...
But it does quite a bit that Gloomhaven does, but in a different way, of course.
Yeah.
So...
I would say that
I'd still probably say no. This is not worth the 170.
Absolutely not.
Unless if you have a choice of dropping 170 on this or dropping $100 on Gloomhaven, obviously you're saving $70. Use the 70 for something else. But I would say you still don't get enough. You do get quite a bit of cardboard. You get 3D terrain pieces. You don't get that much minis. Like, the enemies are kind of the same. You get a lot of bandits, at least in the beginning. They're changed in the app, though. Like, It's bandit or bandit sniper, and that changes how they play. So, like I said, everything is clean. Everything is, there was like 3 decks of stuff. This deck right here is skills. These are weapons, and these are all just for the individual characters, and the rest are consumables. Everything else is in the app. So, essentially, you probably have $100 worth of stuff
on here.
Yeah, and if everything in the app was physical, like, hey, okay, we have a shaft, we have a grip, we have a pommel, we have all that, then it'd be worth it. So you're essentially paying $70. All that stuff is
for app
convenience.
That is free, quote unquote. But literally, you're paying $70 for the app. And $100 for everything else.
Is kind of how I would equate it. Because you don't have a scenario book. You don't have any of that. Honestly, but there's a Gloomhaven helper app, which takes out half of the stuff.
Really?
Like, you pretty much have your character, all your character stuff, and your equipment. But essentially what we have now. And then you have the terrain, like we're doing, but then the app is kind of like, oh, it controls all the enemies. Like, you don't have to flip every single enemy card. It all does it for you.
And is it free?
Yes. So it's not a narrative, but there's also the Foreteller app, which has professional voice acting.
That's
So there are a bunch of other apps that Gloomhaven has. but it's still $100, and there's 90 scenarios,
And
90 plus. Well, actually, there's an expansion, so I think 100 over 100.
And all the apps they're free.
Yeah,
So
they're free, and
there's then, in my opinion, I haven't played Gloomhaven, but from all of that, there's no reason this should be $170.
yeah. I mean, that's absolutely true.
If this was,
I mean, if you take each scenario of which has a campaign, and you won't play all of them because a lot of them get shut down depending on choices you make. If they're about an hour, let's say you do half of those, that's 40 hours. 40 plus hours. I don't know how long this is.
so, because from the first, it was an hour and 55 minutes, and the one we just did was an hour and 15. So
We're already in 3 hours
3
in two
hours.
scenarios.
So
So it depends on how long. If this is like a 100-hour campaign, which I can tell you probably won't be.
I don't know how many quests it would give us for the first act. I don't know how long side quests will be. If this can give me 40 hours, essentially if it could give me the amount of time I would spend in a video game or an RPG video game, I will say this is at least worth $140.
I'd say 140. Yeah, you could get it online. But what's interesting is I don't know who this is for either, because if people are huge fans of the original Descents,
This
is nothing like it. Like, I know it's been a few years since I've played Descent 2nd Edition, but I know for a fact this is nothing like. They've even said it. Hey, this isn't a 3rd edition. This is completely different. So it's like, okay, new fans of the Descent, or like me, hey, I hated the other one, maybe I'll try this one, but I had to shell out $140 for it. I mean, it's a judgment call with really anything. Like, if you want an excellent, I mean, it's still unique, 3D terrain, awesome app integration, definitely pick it up. But if you're kind of if you're anywhere on the fence, like, you're waffling, I wouldn't drop it. I'd say go get Gloomhaven. But this is also easier to learn than Gloomhaven. So
I could believe that.
there's pros and cons. It's a very weird, controversial, because everyone's pissed about the price point. This game already has like a fucking 4 out of 10 on Board Game Geek, because everyone was already, before the game came out, they were like, one, because people just suck. And
man, that is. I mean, I didn't spend any money, so I don't have a say on the price point.
I will say this, actually. I do not regret spending the $140.
Okay.
So I can go that far. Is I am very pleasantly surprised that I am having as much fun as I am, because I was like, I guess we'll see if this is any good. And yeah, I'm like, oh my god, this is so much fun. The app is really neat. Let's interact. Let's work together. Let's be cool. Cool characters. Tag team. So I personally think it was worth the $140. I would have been fine with $170. So that's definitely one thing. And for everyone who's shitting on the art, I don't see it. I think the art is, now this is fucking generic. The box is kind of, I mean, they have a pretty cool with the insert, or the way the box
works. The stained glass.
That whole thing is just for the 3D train, which is what it is. I'm glad they gave you something to store it in. But then you have this box, which is where everything else goes in, the minis with the cool stained glass, and then that weird things. I wish that, though, was longer, so you didn't have the weird stained glass showing.
Oh, yeah.
In it. It's a little odd, but probably because you have this box, like, it would have been hard to get it all out.
I think the artwork's great.
I like it. I think it's neat. The weapons are cool. The designs for the characters are a little weird. Like Bryn, for example, with her propeller hat.
Yeah, but
it's a little odd. And out of all the characters, I actually think the elf is the worst looking one.
He definitely looks
the worst.
It's
a weird... It's like a harsh, gross realism. It's like you would see this art on Adult Swim. Like Ugly Americans, or like those... I mean, art's subjective, of course, but I know a lot of people, that's the first thing they say is like, oh, the art's awful. And I'm like, it's not, though.
It's not bad. Art's subjective, too.
Yeah. So as long as they flesh out the characters and you can feel like they are individual characters and not just, you know, generic stereotypes of each type of class, then I'll take it. And depending on how the campaign goes, if it's replayable with different decisions and different quests that you go on, then I think it's a pretty good success.
I imagine we'll do another discussion, whether it be in the middle or at the end or wherever the campaign stops. But yeah, as of right now, I'm really enjoying it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. All right, so on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give it right now?
I'm a little biased because I didn't spend any money on it. I give it a 9.
9. Yeah, that's really where I'm at, because I don't feel like the money was lost.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sitting here like, this game is good, but I did spend quite a bit on it. So, like, the money is, I'm not even really thinking about it. I knew I had to talk about it. But, yeah, I'm going to give it a 9 as well. This is a lot of fun. And hopefully in the run-throughs I can actually, if the screen sharing if I can figure that out, hopefully we can actually show the app, but I think it might be visible somewhat from a distance.
Hopefully.
But yeah, as of right now, it's a 9 out of 10. I'm having a blast. Alright, so that's our thoughts on Descent Legends of the Dark. Let us know what you think of the game in the comments below. Other than that, like, comment, share, and subscribe, and have a wonderful whatever time of day it is for you. Hey everyone, thank you for watching, and I really hope that you enjoyed the video. If you would like to see more of my content, go ahead and click that subscribe button and the bell to be notified whenever I upload any new content. If you feel like supporting the channel, you can go ahead and click that Patreon link to be taken to my Patreon, and any help is truly appreciated. Other than that, stick around for any other run-throughs or reviews or cool top 10s or whatever I feel like putting on. Other than that, like, comment, share, and subscribe, and have a wonderful whatever time of day it is for you.